Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm feeling excited and I'm feeling happy. I always get that goosebump feeling of excitement when I know that I'm going to be talking to people that are close to the money. And this is the case. I'm talking this afternoon to Judith Pryor, board member of the Export Import Bank of the United States of America. So Judith, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm so happy to be here with you and our friends of the AEF. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Excellent. So we have a lot of topic to cover. So I'm sure you wouldn't mind me just diving straight in, right?
Please jump right in.
Okay, let's go for that. So
All right.
EXIM Bank. So EXIM US has a long history working with Africa, but we also know that that relationship has gone through twists and turns. So what is the status of the relationship these days? What would you say about
Yeah, Tony, thanks for that question. It's a great place to start. I truly feel that the U.S., United States, certainly has been a strong, reliable partner to the people of Africa, and we have a long history on the continent. Our first project was in what's present day Angola in 1942. First project, it was for a port, about $300,000 in financing. And then our first energy project, our first power project, was to support activities in Ethiopia following World War II, so in 1944. We financed a variety of power sector projects, everything from engineering services for ESCOM in South Africa to facilities for the Ghanaian government, rural electrification. And we actually have a congressional mandate. So our government has asked us through our charter or EXIM's law to increase our exports for sub-Saharan Africa. So over the last 20 years, we bring it closer to our lifetimes. Over the past 20 years, we've done about $20 billion in financing in sub-Saharan Africa. And that includes $8 billion that's been financed in just the past year and a half alone, and since I've been on the board and we've been operational again. We've been a partner to Africa for so many years. Each administration, from the Clinton administration to the Trump administration, has had their initiative in Africa. During Clinton, it was AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, and that's been renewed twice since then. Under Bush, it was PEPFAR, which was a global program, but the crisis was truly acute in Africa. During the Obama administration, and I worked for the Obama administration for 6.5 years at OPIC, which is now the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, Power Africa was launched. So that was really a little more focused on helping to drive electrification, megawattage, new touch points, 60 million new touch points and 30,000 new megawatts of capacity. And they came pretty close to their goal. I know you're talking with Mark Corrado a little bit later, Tony, so I won't go on there. But finally, under Trump, we get to this administration and Prosper Africa. So we've really wanted to focus on increasing two-way trade and investment. And it's really been a whole of government approach. We have embassy deal teams. We have trade and investment hubs. My colleagues at the USTDA or the Millennial Challenge Corporation, we have a functioning EXIM board, and we have a new supersized OPIC, as I mentioned earlier, now the DFC. And, they have a higher debt ceiling now of about $100 billion. And they're also able to invest equity. So if we talk about the history, I think that's probably just a snapshot of showing our support for the continent and how much we've enjoyed partnering with so many on the continent.
That's excellent. So what I know that you say, so you are now back in action, because what I know so far, the board has been fully operational, right? And in May last year, you were confirmed with your colleague. And I have to say that the agency has a lot to catch up with. And I'm sure you'll be very busy since you've been back full steam. So what kind of activity have you been doing since you've been restored?
Well, thank you for that, Tony, and for our viewers and participants that don't know, EXIM Bank was shuttered for just about 4 years because we didn't have our operating authority, which is something that Congress has to enact, and then we didn't have a board quorum or an operational board. There weren't enough people to bring any projects to the board for approval. So, as the official export credit agency of the United States, we have a very distinct mission, and that is to support U.S. jobs by facilitating the export of U.S. goods and services. So made in the USA, exported abroad. The brief lapse wasn't so brief. And I think we came out, certainly when we started in May of 2019, we had to take a step back and we talked about a $40 billion in pipeline projects. And, we had to really go through that pipeline and say, are these projects still real? Have these companies moved on? Have they gone out of business? Have they not been able to fund because they haven't had the EXIM Bank to support them? So that was the first thing we took a look at. And while we were taking a look at that, of course, it was time for us to be reauthorized once again. So we were able to secure, and this was an all hands on deck. Let me tell you, Tony, everybody at the agency was engaged to try to get this over the finish line. But there was tremendous bipartisan support from our U.S. Congress, and they gave us a 7-year reauthorization that was effective December 2019. And what that does, Tony, for U.S. companies and exports, it provides certainty that we will be around to see these projects through to the end and that we will be a partner to them. So let's just quickly talk about, it's been a year and a half. We had to ramp up. But what I'm especially proud of as the person who runs Point for Africa on the board is that 3 of our first 4 projects were on the continent. So, and in fact, in sub-Saharan Africa. So the first one you probably know of, Weldy Lamont. It's a small business out of Chicago, Illinois, and the board approved a $91 million financing for grid expansion, as well as some microgrids in Senegal. And this, I was talking about, this government, truly whole of government approach of Prosper Africa. This is a perfect example. It was all of our sister agencies involved in the economic fields for the government really got involved. What this project will do is provide 400 rural villages with electrification. And then in addition, there will be a couple of even smaller rural communities that will get microgrids. So 400 rural villages, that's about 500,000 people. This helps Senegal, whose goal in the next 5 years is to achieve universal electrification. And the second power project that we did, of course, is the Mozambique LNG. Not only is it one of the probably largest projects in the world at $25 billion, but EXIM funded $4.7 billion, and that's one of our largest financings ever in the history of the agency. So what does that mean for EXIM, for the US, for Africa? Well, it means over 16,000 US jobs will be supported during the construction period and thousands of jobs on the ground for Mozambicans. And it could be potentially transformational, Tony, with $60 billion in revenue expected for Mozambique over the 10-year period. This could truly be their opportunity to make good. That's just a little snapshot. Sorry if I'm talking too long. I get excited when we start to talk about EXIM and all that we can do in Africa, especially on the sub-Saharan Africa. So
I have to say that's actually a great snapshot. So you mentioned 3 countries. I believe the third one is Cameroon, isn't it?
It is Cameroon, and it's a preliminary commitment. So they haven't come back to us for a final, but it's for construction equipment and build out and spare parts training and maintenance for their civil works projects. So we hope that comes back to board soon. But it's been a tough go with COVID, and so some things have been slowed down a bit, but then I will tell you, on the other hand, we are busier than we've ever been.
And I would imagine, and the reason I mentioned Cameroon is that I have a personal bias because I'm from Cameroon. That's what I wanted to
Is that right? Okay. Wonderful.
To be fair to you, I know as well that when we say that the agency was not operational for 4 years, that's not technically true, but you're actually dealing with small businesses on a $10 million transaction. I believe that was good.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tony. And I mean, that's been the one good thing. Traditionally, even in last year, if we look at numbers from 2019, so I can get these right. Let's see. In 2019, we really did quite a few transactions. Typically, in any given year, small business transactions represent about 90% of EXIM's book. That's huge, right? But if you think of it, they are small businesses. It's mostly export credit insurance. But then you do have companies like Weldy Lamont that we just talked about. That is a small business as well, and it's enough of a dollar amount financing requirement that it would come to our board. But the small business team is the one team that gets to stay busy, even when we're shuttered, right? So they still get to interact with customers and help American businesses, and it's really been great to see them in action. We've done quite a bit since we've been back. Small businesses has continued throughout. I mentioned the volume amount, the 90%. But in 2019, they also booked about $2.6 billion in financing. So it is a large and significant amount. So we know that small businesses are working. I wish a bigger portion of that could be for Africa, but I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit. But just as we were hitting our stride, we've been really busy since May, as I mentioned. The historic reauthorization, we had 29 board meetings. We've committed over $7 billion, almost $7.5 billion in financing across 13 transactions, I think it is. And we've updated numerous policies. We've installed a chief risk officer at the bank, a chief ethics officer, and we voted on lots of resolutions to help American industry, particularly during COVID-19. So we have been busy. The bigger projects, of course, often take much longer, sometimes, 12 months, 18 months to put together, like the Mozambique LNG. That had been in the works during the whole time we were shuttered. And it just through good teamwork and some very experienced underwriters at the bank were we able to keep our foot in the mix and really end up supporting U.S. exporters to the tune of $4.7 billion in U.S. exports. So that worked out pretty well for us.
Okay, I think what I can see here and what I remember is that in Mandarin, right, there is a word to say crisis, which also means opportunities. And I believe that this is actually what is happening to EXIM.
Yeah.
The crisis for commercial bank is an opportunity for you, right? So, which is actually.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's very true.
But now, talking about China, right? So, this is a little bit tricky question, but let me make it easy for you. I don't want to get into trouble.
I don't either. All right. But we can get into a little bit of trouble together, maybe.
But it's notorious that there is a bit of a tension between the two countries, obviously the United States and China. But I wanted to know, so what role can EXIM play to sort of appease those relationships? That's number one, but also rebalance the Africa trade relationship.
Well, okay, a couple of things. I'm not gonna wade into the White House politics of it all, but I will say, from an EXIM perspective, if you were to say, are you for or against China on the African continent? I would say yes. That would be my answer. Yes, I am for and against China on the African continent. We hear a lot of disturbing news about environmental issues, human rights issues, forced labor, no local stimulus, no local engagement, right? I mean, the phrase that gets bantered around in Washington, D.C. quite a bit is debt trap diplomacy. So I would guess that EXIM estimates, we put out an annual report on a competitiveness report every year. And EXIM estimates globally, because we have to estimate because the actual numbers really don't exist, that China provided about 33.5 billion in official export credit in 2019 to EXIM's 5.3 billion. So, you know what? Should we do more? You bet. I mean, we're working on it through the Prosper Africa initiative, but there are also a couple of other ways that we are even more focused on, if you will, tackling the China problem when it relates to export credits. One of the things that in this historic reauthorization that I mentioned we got last December from our Congress, 7 years, one of the things that they directed us to do is to create a program on China and transformational exports. So the focus is on about 10 sectors, everything from 5G to quantum computing to water and sanitation, space, ICT, et cetera. And we've held numerous teleconferences with industry leaders here in the States to see how we might be able to do something together. I mean, and they really, Congress was very clear in its language, and it said they want us to provide rates and terms that are fully competitive with China. So I truly believe that when we compete on a level playing field, we being the USA, American exports win. Our businesses, our manufacturers, our exporters bring quality product, fair value, transparency, and all of our projects are held to high environmental and social standards, including labor and human rights. I'm an American. I'm a patriot. I know you probably are a patriot too, Tony, as a Cameroonian. And, in my humble opinion, though, we as Americans, we need to stop playing defense with China. And we just need to get off of our back foot. We need to build alliances. We need to garner support. We need to provide our own solutions through engagement and action. But we have a Sub-Saharan Africa Advisory Committee, also mandated by our Congress. And during the very first meeting at the bank, when we had just come on board, we had a guest speaker, and he got up, and he's done a lot of work in Africa, and he looked at the board straight in the eye, and he said, let's not forget, we're the good guys. And so when I say, we care about human rights and environmental and social standards and sustainable debt loads, that's what I mean. But if you think about it, the China problem isn't really a US problem. It's really an African problem. 25% of imports come from China to Sub-Saharan Africa, and 25% of exports go to China. 25%. That's too much reliance on one market. There needs to be more choice. Africa has many more choices. You do a huge book with a lot of work with, of course, the European Union, which is fabulous. But for one country, the EU is, I don't know how many countries now, 28 maybe. You have the EU is many, many countries. China is one country. Having one country own 25% of the debt is probably just not sustainable and could be potentially detrimental. So Africa has choices, and I like to think that the U.S. is a good one, but diversification is key. That's what I think I would pivot by saying about China.
The one thing I didn't realize is actually the time is really, really flying. So we're just going to have time now for one more question. But let me just very quickly to one thing that you said. So as an African, I don't want to get into the dispute, but all I want to say, as a customer, I want the best deal. That's all. I'm just going to leave it there.
Yes, so, understood. I understand.
So coming back now to what's going to be probably my last question, and I will be grateful if you just give us a 30-second response. And I want to touch on that because the theme of this year is actually technology, the fifth industrial revolution. So I want to know, so from the position where you're in, Have you identified any trend, like for example, technology that fly on the radar and that you believe we can bring up into the forefront to make sure that we can accelerate the electrification of Africa? By any chance?
We should have started here, right? We should have started here, Tony, because you're the expert on renewables. And let's talk about renewable energy and energy storage and energy efficiency. Again, another area where we've been asked to lean in by the Congress. It's another area that I run a point on for our board. So I have Sub-Saharan Africa and MENA, the MENA region, and as well as renewable energy efficiency and energy storage. But trends, look what Africa was able to do just with mobile communications. Completely leapfrogged traditional telecom. There's mobile communications, went straight there into mobile banking. So let's talk a little bit about renewables, because for me, why not leapfrog straight to renewables? I think we know the answer is the problem is baseload power. We know Africa needs more power, but storage and efficiency are paramount and could be potentially transformational for Africa. I mean, the sun shines all the time. There's hydro and geothermal and wind power, but you do need baseload power. And in my opinion, better it be gas than coal, hands down. We got to figure out the storage thing. Actually, Tony, you're the expert here. What do you think? To me, that needs to be, we can see if we can't leapfrog and have Africa be the cleanest continent on the planet.
Well, I definitely think that we definitely need to be looking at renewables. So you're absolutely right. So running a renewable company, I can only think like that. And I think that's my position in many other platforms. Unfortunately, I can't go into length into that. All I can say today is, so Judith Pryor, that was a pleasure to have you. So you've been gone missing for too long. Talking about EXIM Bank. We are happy to have you back at the table. We're hoping to see you more at the negotiation table, and with your permission, bring the cash, please. So thank you for today, and I'll see you.
Thank you so much, Tony. And I would just close just by saying that, there has to be will on both sides, and American businesses are ready and able. EXIM is there to help, and I hope that we can do more together.
That's all we're waiting for. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you.